Live from your public broadcasting studios, it's the State of Pennsylvania, the region's premier news and information program with WVIA President and CEO Bill Kelly and correspondents Nancy Kamen and Suzanne Kelly. This is State of Pennsylvania. And now, WVIA President and CEO Bill Kelly.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to State of Pennsylvania. Our show tonight begins with a depressing thought, but it won't stay that way, so please be patient. If you were to die in the next few hours, what would your family hold in their hands tomorrow that told them they were the treasures of your life? Letters from Dad is a national movement that started in Texas and is coming to Northeast Pennsylvania. It's a book. The author is Greg Vaughn, and he flew in today to our State of Pennsylvania program to take your calls and comments. This all started when Greg's father died from Alzheimer's disease, leaving him sad and even angry because his dad had never expressed his feelings to him. From that shattering experience came Letters from Dad, Greg's idea to teach small groups of men how to express on paper their deepest thoughts and feelings for their kids to read, in many cases, after we're gone. These men help each other write the words they always wanted to say but just never knew quite how. For many men, and you probably know some, saying the words, "I love you and I'm proud of you," to their sons and daughters is considered unmanly. If you're one of them, stay with us for the next hour and learn how to wrap the greatest gift you'll ever give. If you already speak and show your feelings freely to your kids, stay here and then, as they say, pass it on. Our phone number is 1-800-326-9842. I welcome your phone calls and comments. I have a feeling we will touch the hearts of a lot of people tonight. Greg, welcome to our show.
It's a pleasure to be here with you, Bill. I'm anxious to talk and find out about you, and you're going to find out about me, I guess.
You're the guest.
Oh, okay.
I'm the host. Let's understand the protocol right up front.
Ask that question.
I do want to, again, encourage all of you watching as you hear Greg Vaughn tell his remarkable story and how his idea has changed the lives of countless parents around this country. It is a great story, and I only told part of it, Greg, in the first few words there. Why don't we start by explaining what that beat-up metal box is on the table in front of us?
It is a bit strange looking.
It has, yeah. What in the world? You brought that on the airplane with you. Why'd you do that?
I travel everywhere with that, Bill. I probably speak 80 times a year, and it accompanies me. And it's a symbol to me of my father. It's a symbol of the story that you told a little bit of, but I did lose my father about 8 years ago, and I'm a boomer. There's not very many of us out there. There's only 78 million. Here's the demographics of most boomers. They never heard these words. Son, sweetheart, I love you. You're a treasure in my life. Most of us didn't hear those words. And when I lost my father, I have to confess to you, I lost my way a little bit. I knew he loved me because he put food on the table and there was always a roof over my head. But I didn't hear those words. I never heard those words. So when I lost him, I went into, I guess what you'd call grief and a bit of an angry time in my life. I remember thinking, why couldn't he have said those words? And I was cleaning out my garage one day on a hot July day in Dallas. And as I was cleaning it out, I looked to my left. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I looked to my left. And I remember seeing something hitting the sun, and it was the old tackle box. And I said, how in the world did I get that? I don't even remember receiving it. But it was the only thing left I had of my dad. And I remember going over and looking at, first of all, picking it up and saying, that old rusty relic is going to go in the trash. That's where it belongs. So I remember walking to the Dempsey dumpster, opening it up, and nothing weird happened, but I heard a word in my spirit that said, open the box. And I did, Bill. You can see I pried open this old tackle box. And when I pried it open, I was like a little kid in a candy shop. It was like a little treasure chest for me. He was always cutting himself, so it was that onion teen, that burning stuff, you know. And I just began rummaging through this, and gosh, when I speak, I usually my lips get dry. And remember that lip chap stuff? And I popped it open one day. I forgot my lip chap, and it was as good as it was 50 years ago. But this is what got me. It was the old lures, the tackle box. And as I stared at them, I had a memory. I remember my father always wanted to go fishing right after Christmas with my Uncle Bob. I remember standing as a kid looking at him go down that street going, man, I'd like to go fishing. But I didn't. So as I looked at that...
You weren't invited to go fish?
I was not invited.
Okay.
But I remember tossing those back in the tackle box and just kind of crying out, I am so angry. I'm so mad at you, Dad, and that's dumb because you're dead. And I'm mad at myself. Maybe I could have done something to open him up a little bit. And I knew that wasn't true. And that was the catalyst for me doing something. I began to get this little question in my mind, and you read it, and it came like this. Greg, if you were to die today out here in the garage, what would your children hold in their hands that would let them know that they were the treasures of their life? And I got in a real argument with myself. I said, well, of course they'd hold memories, more memories than you can imagine, more vacations, more video than you could ever view. But I felt this strong impression that it needed to be more than that. I felt that it had something to do with letter writing. I
trust you had not been like your father in terms of affection and speaking important words to your kids before the tackle box. Yeah. You were not that person.
I was not that. I was like you. I had a conversation. I tell my kids, I determined when I had children that they would always hear these words, I love you. I have 7 children. That's a lot of I love yous. And so the realization that I'm going to die, if I were to die, what would they hold? And it came back to a lot of stuff. And I said, I'm not going to leave them with stuff. I need to figure out a way to communicate to them after I'm gone. And I did what every man does that gets stuck. We call our friends. My truck won't start. Can you help me? My computer's busted. Can you come over? I called 12 of the most wonderful men you could imagine, my dearest friends. And I asked them a couple of questions. I said, do you have a letter of love and blessing from your father? Cards don't count, especially the ones that Mom bought
Sure.
and he signed. No, I'm talking about a 1-paragraph or 20-page letter. And there was silence on those 12 phone calls. No, I don't. Well, what would you give for one if you had one? Oh, man, more than you'd ever know. Final question, I'll leave you alone. Have you ever written such a letter to your children? I've written some cards, no letters. Don't you think we should? And that was the start of Letters.
Let me, I should say our audience must obviously have picked up by now that you do a lot of this. You speak in churches all the time. So you're obviously a man who's very comfortable telling this story. I want to remind our audience that this is an interactive television show, and we really want you to call and share your personal experience. This is a very personal story, and I think each of us have answers to the questions that you ask. Do we have that letter from our father and all of those sorts of things? Those 12 men that you called, had any of them been like your father, not in communication on an emotional level with their kids? Did they need what you had to say?
The vast majority.
Yes or no?
Did not get what I didn't get. I mean, they really never heard those words. I take that. One man had an email from his father, and it just a rambling, nonsensical email. But at the end of it, his father says, I love you. Well, that young man, he's 45 years old. He said he's carried that for 10 years of his life in his briefcase. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter whether it's an email or any kind of letter. We cherish that, Bill. It's a treasure.
I have so many questions for you. It's a remarkable story. You brought those 12 men together in your neighborhood in Dallas, Texas, and started what came eventually to be known as legacy groups. Yeah. What is a legacy group?
We started, I invited 12 busy men. I said, come on, let's have a lunch. We're not going to do this forever. Let's just do it a few times and see if we can figure this out. And we got together for lunch. And we decided that we were going to write 4 letters. There were 12 of us. I invited 12 men and 14 showed up. I think you could give $100 bills away and not have that kind of ratio. And we said, we're just going to meet together a few times. I said, well, what kind of letters do you think we should write? I said, I think we should write our kids. And a guy says, I can't write my kids until I thank my wife for the kids. I went, oh yeah, I should have said that, shouldn't I? So we decided to write a blessing letter to our wives because they're the ones that she's the one that gave us the privilege of being father. We're going to write a blessing letter to each of our children. And if we're grandparents, we're going to write those grandkids too. We decided we were going to write a blessing letter to our parents. Most of us are like the lepers. Jesus healed 10 lepers. Only one went back to say thank you. We're going to go back to mom and dad, and we're going to say thank you. Thank you for what you did. And the 4th letter, they kind of came up with those. I came up with this one. We're going to write the final letter of our life.
And what is that?
That no one reads till we leave this earth.
And that's so marked. No one is allowed to open it until you are gone.
We're gone. Yes.
And what is intended to be in that letter?
The intention here is hopefully my father loved me at birth. He loved me through life. And he left me with a roadmap to run on for the rest of my life. That's not original to me. I can't take credit for any of this, Bill. It's all from other people. I got that from a 78-year-old Jewish man. I was visiting with him one time in a small group, and I asked the question to these men. I said, if you were to round the house, the corner of your house, and you see your house on fire, and you could go get but one thing, just one item out of the house, what would it be? And this man raised his hand, flew up, matter of fact, and he said, I tell you what it would be, Greg. It'd be my briefcase. And I said, well, that's not the really answer I was looking for. Why your briefcase, Bob? And he reached down in his briefcase and he pulled out a letter. And he said, you see this letter? My father died when I was 12 years old. I've carried this letter. I've read this letter every week of my life for 60 years. This letter has been like a roadmap for me.
Whew. If I'm not mistaken, in your book, I think you're talking about your own daughter, or she is saying, did you leave a note on a coat hanger? Yeah. At what age was your daughter when you did that?
You know, I didn't even remember it. I didn't even remember doing it. Probably 10.
And you wrote on the paper part of a clothes hanger, I love you, or something like this.
And she carried it with her all the way through college. She still has it hanging.
And you didn't know that, did
I didn't know it. Not till I asked her to come on stage and share something about this thing called Letters from Dad and why it might be important. And she says, I'm going to tell a little story that my dad doesn't know. That makes us nervous, you know, especially on stage.
Let's talk for a moment about who Greg Vaughn is. You're in the business. What's the name of your business?
I have a company called Grace Products.
You've always been in the business of providing materials to churches in some fashion. Is that correct?
Churches. We're one of the leading providers of dramatic materials, films to the school market. Won a couple television Emmys for that. Yeah. So my background's making movies that touch hearts.
Why you're successful? You've obviously love what you do, yet you have taken this thing called Letters from Dad on as I guess I almost have to call it a ministry. It's a passion. It's a mission. It's
a mission. That's right. Ministry, yes. Passion. It's for everyone.
What difference are you making that you can really point to and support?
Brings me to tears to even tell you that. This final letter of our life, I got a call from a lady that says, I'm wanting to call you and tell you a story. My husband just died, and on his deathbed, he asked me to scribe a letter to you, thanking you for Letters from Dad. He said, because at the funeral a few weeks later, all 4 of his kids came up on the podium to read their letter from their father. What does that mean? What does it mean that a man going through a divorce, his heart's ripped out, finds a new way of communicating with his kids that are hurting?
That needed that new way. That's in your book, that man's story. Let's take a phone call. Sure. Okay? We're going to go to Milton and Tom. Tom, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Appreciate you calling. Go right ahead.
Yeah, well, I just want to let him know that our church here in Milton, Community Mennonite, is doing his book as a Bible study for men's group. There's like 2 different Mennonite churches that's doing it. And when we had a dinner about it, I was one of the few men that actually raised my hand my father, I have gotten a letter from my father. It was part of an Emmaus walk, and they asked for letters from family and friends. And it was one time I understood how proud my father loved it. And what that letter meant to us about your book. And I just wanted to say, one, thank you for writing the book, and two, that I'm looking forward to trying to write the letters to my kids, because that's something I've never been real good at doing, is communicating with my kids like that.
What an honor to hear that comment. He says, I'm not good, but you know what? I heard his heart there. All he's got to do is put a few words down.
Now, your book, Letters from Dad, is it easily available to people?
It is. It had wide distribution. It's become a best-selling book. Well, but occasionally it's not there. So if it's not, just Google it.
I have a good friend who tried to get it at Barnes & Noble, and it wasn't in stock. So you go to lettersfromdad.com.
Lettersfromdad.com.
That's your website.
Yes. I was thrilled to hear that. You know, back to this little story. Me and 12 guys. We delivered these at Christmas, and we just didn't deliver them, here's a letter, sweetheart. We found the beautiful mahogany box. It's beautiful. It has a picture frame on the outside, and we placed our children's pictures on them and with us, and we put their full name and engraved it. And one by one, we delivered it to our children. I delivered all 7 of them to my children. And there was just silence at that Christmas. I'll never forget it. And one by one, as they opened this beautiful memory box, and they never seen Dad do this. This is not me, Bill. This is not me. And then they read their letters, and one by one, they came and said, Dad, this is the greatest gift I've ever received.
How much time had you spent writing letters to go in the mahogany box prior to your giving them?
I probably spent an hour on each letter.
And how many letters were in the box?
One per child.
One per child.
Per child. And the concept in Letters from Dad is simply this. Build a box, buy a box, find a box, and deliver a letter in a treasure box. Take your wife out to dinner and shock her. There's a beautiful wrapped present. She opens it up. What's this? Have the maitre d' give it to her. So do something fun and exciting, and let her open it up, and she will not believe that you did that. Talk about enriching a marriage. When a man rehearses why he loves her and why she is still the woman of his life, it can transform a marriage.
Tell my audience about the man who we're going to see. We have a piece of video of a gentleman you said you've known for a very long time. What's his name, and tell us about him?
Yeah. His name is Jim Moore. He's a wonderfully successful, well-known, wonderful man in Dallas, Texas. He was taking letters from Dad, and he came to me.
What motivated him to go to Letters from Dad?
He'd never written a letter like this in his life. But what really motivated him is he didn't get the blessing from his father. He received nothing from his father. In fact, he came to me and he says, about a week ago, I got a call. It's probably a call that we're all going to get. They said, if you want to see your dad, you better get up to Chicago fast. So he jumped on a plane all the way up there. On the plane, he kept kind of saying a prayer to himself. He said, I just hope I get to hear those words. Son, I love you. He had never heard it. And so as he arrived at the nursing home, it was a beautiful day, and he asked for a wheelchair. And as he got the wheelchair, he went to his dad and said, hey, Dad, let's go out into the garden. And as he went out in the garden, he was hoping he would hear it, but he never heard it. Let's let Jim tell the story from there.
Okay.
He's a precious man.
We'll go to a videotape and hear the story from Jim Moore right now. Thank you.
All of my life, I had tried to earn my dad's satisfaction and approval. I didn't really know why I was doing that, but I wanted to hear the words, son, I love you and I'm proud of you. My dad loved me, I knew that, but he just didn't outwardly show it. And toward the end of his life, I was with him in a garden in his nursing home. And I knew this would be, if not the last, one of my last visits with him. I was pushing him along, and he motioned that he wanted to say something to me. He extended his hand, and I thought I might hear, son, I love you and I'm proud of you, or words like that. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but I just knew I wanted my dad's blessing. Instead, he said, son, it's been nice knowing you, and simply shook my hand. And those were the last real words that I ever heard from my dad. That pain stayed with me for years until a few years ago I was reading John Eldridge's book, Wild at Heart, and I came to chapter 4, which Eldridge calls the wound, the father wound. And I had never put a label to it, but it took me 3 times to get through that chapter without just breaking down and weeping, because I knew that's what I was suffering from. I had never received my father's blessing, and I wanted it. I wanted him to say, "Son, you can make it." Letters from Dad that I was introduced to about a year ago has given me the tools to implement the very things that I did not receive as a young man. I determined that I wanted to leave a legacy to my children, my wife, my grandchildren, and even my great-grandchildren. And to have something, I don't have a single letter today from my dad. Not only do I not have the verbal blessing, but what I would give for a letter from my dad telling me how proud he was and that I could make it and that he was encouraging me in all the areas that a young man needs encouraging in. So I determined that I was going to start writing letters. With the help from Letters from Dad, we actually went through a program where we wrote individual letters to our wives. We wrote individual letters to our children on the very things that they were having problems with. And I received a blessing in return when I saw what it meant to them.
I would imagine that video piece resonates with many people who hear it. It's a great story.
It does. You can't imagine the men that, after I speak, come streaming up to me and tell stories like that.
Mm-hmm. We have a person in our audience who wants to ask you a question. Let me go to my colleague, George Thomas. George?
Thanks, Bill. We have Reverend Zanicki from Wilkes-Barre. And your question, please.
Well, this sounds like a wonderful program, Greg, and I wonder how you might apply this to women as well, who perhaps don't write to their children as fathers don't.
I tell you, thank you for that question. I've been beat up for about 3 years. Women saying, "When are you going to come up with letters from Mom?" You know, and this week, matter of fact, this very week, 2 days ago, we released the counterpart to Letters from Dad. It's called Blessings from the Heart, A Woman's Legacy. So all the principles that you're hearing here are being fleshed out in that brand new program that we're going to be releasing. And it's going to be fun.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
The premise, I suppose, of Letters from Dad, however, Sean, isn't it true that men tend to be more disabled in terms of expressing their emotions? Isn't that fair to say?
Most men are frozen, terrified.
I was intrigued when you started our program by acknowledging that you and I are both baby boomers, mm-hmm. if you will, and that many, if not most of baby boomers, you believe, suffer from this inability to express their emotions to their kids.
Yes.
What's the basis of that?
Well, we didn't hear it, we didn't see it, and it's hard for us to give. But the good news is, Bill, this is the good news. When a man finally realizes, whoa, I didn't get it. I love my kids. This is important? Oh, scary, a little bit scary. Can you teach me how to do it? Yes. Will you equip me to do it? Yes. Will you surround me with other men that kind of cheer me on and move me through the process? Yes. You'll be amazed at how proud men are when they finally get that first letter down that says, I love you.
What is scary about it to men? Why are men scared to do it?
They're scared for 2 reasons. There's 2 reasons why men don't write. Number 1, our handwriting stinks, okay? It's just a common fact. And number 2, we can't spell. So you put those 2 together and it's terrifying. And that's the reason we do use word processors. We do have spell check. And they are not long letters, Bill. Let me just tell you what. Letters from Dad let me tell you what it's not. It's not a long letter. Men go, how long's not long? I said 1 page. They go, wow, 1 page? Triple space? Yes, that too. You know, you can do that. But it is a relief to know that you don't have to write a book. It can be short. And what it really is it's really thoughtful. It's a thoughtful letter. It's not a rambling letter. It's intentional. It's purposeful. And it always has its final intent to communicate your unconditional love and blessing. And here's another very important part. It's always void of criticism. I've seen more good letters ruined in the last paragraph when they say, if you woulda, shoulda, you coulda. Nah, none of that. And so those are kind of the parameters that we work towards.
Yeah. I want to remind our audience that we're live in the Public Broadcasting Center, and we'd like you to call in, or if you're a little shy about calling in on this topic, you can use our website, WVIA.org, and share your thoughts on the subject of letters from Dad. I was so taken with your book that I've shared it with many friends over the last few weeks, and it resonated with me that many women acknowledged to me that they missed that acknowledgement from the father. And it is much more common than I believed it was. And maybe that's because I didn't have that experience. I had a remarkably loving father who, and it only occurred to me after I read your book, that I had a letter from Dad.
You do?
I have. I wish I still had it. I was too young at the time to realize I should have kept it and treasured it. But my father did indeed write me a letter in the last few months of his life in which he talked about the 3 blessings of his life, meeting his children. I didn't realize that was a letter from Dad, as you defined it, until I read your book, and how remarkable and unusual it was.
Well, there are 2 things that we yearn for from a father. We yearn to hear the words, I love you, especially men. I love you is important. The words, I am proud of you, are just as important as the word, I love you. Men are more apt to say, son, Bill, I'm so proud of you. You can make it. We need to hear, I love you, I'm proud of you, I believe in you, and you can make it. When a man has that, his internal compass is more secure in life. And let me tell you what, at least we think this is all about guys. I about had a coronary arrest the other day. I heard some wacko psychiatrist say on the radio that we should not hug our daughters because it could cause harm. And I thought, you know what? If you don't hug them, someone else is. And I believe that letters from Dad is based upon the power of the written word, and we've talked about that. But it's also the power of the spoken blessing. What does it mean to bless your children? I got in an elevator the other day and someone sneezed. There was like 5 God bless yous, you know. Is that what a blessing is? No. Our wonderful Jewish friends, the Old Testament, if you go back and rummage through and study Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, you can see 4 principles of blessing over and over and over again.
You mentioned a book that you read called The Blessing.
I haven't written a book for the ladies yet, but we're using Gary Smalley's book, The Blessing. And in that, I learned 4 powerful principles. First of all, the blessing isn't a sneeze. It encompasses physical touch. I guarantee you would have never won the wife of your heart, the heart of your wife, if you had not touched her in an appropriate physical way. Our kids need that. Number 2, it's speaking words of high praise and value. That's what your daddy did to you in that letter. We're to speak life and hope and value into our kids. This is what happens when we do it. I'll give you a little personal example. My first daughter, Holly, she came out of the womb talking. I'm hardly not exaggerating on that. She was debating me and crushing me at 5 and 6 years old. Well, I knew I could either bless that or stomp it, you know, and I decided that I would bless her. I'd say, sweetheart, come sit on my lap. You have a gift. You have a gift of communication. And I believe God is going to use that in your life. And I said, you could be a great, and I would picture things for her. Well, guess what? When it came, I said, you could be an actress. Well, when it came time to cast for a particular 13-year-old girl in a movie, she said, remember what you said to me, Dad? I want to read for it. She won my first television Emmy. So physical touch, words of high praise and value, picturing a special future. And here's a hard one, Bill. In the busy world that we live in, I think this is the hardest. Active commitment. Let me give you a gut check on that. Do our kids know that if they called us at 2 o'clock in the morning and said, Dad, I need you, and I need you now, do they know that we would be having our bags packed and traveling the world to be with them? That's active commitment. And that's the blessing that we can impart as fathers and mothers.
Okay. Let's go to the email. We have from our WVIA.org online community, we have a question for you. How many groups exist across the country, and how do I find one?
From that little group of 12, it exploded. And today, as I got on the airplane, I just got the word we're at 110 churches. Not 110 churches or organizations. I use that together. We have Rotary clubs doing it. It's not just in churches.
It's not just churches.
Every stripe and color of denomination imaginable. You can't name one that's not doing Letters from Dad. So there's 810 or so organizations doing it, and how can you find one? The best way to do it would be to go to our website and type in your zip code, and it'll pop one up that's fairly close to you.
I should say that the way I discovered Letters from Dad is I was listening to the radio one morning, in fact, WILK, and one of their personalities, Sue Henry, was doing a discussion with a local minister from Clark Summit, I believe it was, and they were starting, or had just started, I believe, in February, a Letters from Dad. Do you call it chapters?
Yeah, we do. Chapter.
And so it has begun here. And I believe you also have one about to open in Wilkes-Barre in August?
In August. And I suspect after this broadcast there'll be a lot.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so.
There will be. You know, it's utterly astounding that from those 12 men, they said at the end, it changed our life. I would bump into their wives, and their wives go, I don't know what you did to my husband, but keep going. And they said to me, Greg, we want to do for you what you did to us. We want to invite our friends. We want to throw you a barbecue. I love barbecue. I said, okay.
You're a Texan.
I am a Texan, yeah. And so they threw a barbecue. There were 130 men that showed up. And I went, wow. Did
these women corral their husbands to show up at this?
They do. The next semester there were 350, and the next semester 700 in Dallas.
And you break these into groups of roughly what size?
12.
12 is
it's a legacy group.
It's the magic number.
And you know, what great camaraderie. You see, here's how men do. How you doing? You doing okay? Yeah, I'm doing great. Yeah, good.
Right.
Right.
Very surface.
Yeah. When is the last time you've ever been invited into a group where I really do want to get to know you and your children and your wife? Now, what was her name again? And it is an incredibly bonding and wonderful experience that I get to know some really personal things about you, too. We're really open. I'm struggling with my teenager. Well, congratulations, so am I. You know, you mean I'm not weird? And so these experiences are really life-changing, Bill.
Let's go to the phone again, okay? Here's Swoyersville and John. John, thanks for calling.
Yes, I have a question. I grew up and I had a similar relationship like you with my father. He was very unresponsive. He never expressed his love for me. So when I grew up, as I was growing up, I said, when I become a father, I'm not going to be like my father. And so I tried to communicate with my sons, share things with them, take them out, and even now I write them emails, call them, but they're very unresponsive. It's like I'm dealing with my father, dealing with my father. My sons are unresponsive to my reaching out to them and expressing my love to them. So I don't know how to handle that. You know, it's very frustrating.
John, my heart goes out to you. May I make one little suggestion? Let's try this, John. One of the things I share with men is this technique. Write them a letter that says, you know, I was driving down the road the other day, and for some reason I thought about you. And I thought to myself, what a blessing you are in my life. And today I want to give you a blessing. And then I want you to put on the paper 1 through 10. I am blessed because, and do that 10 times. I am blessed because. And I want you to fill in the blanks there. Just think about your sons and your daughters and fill in the blanks. I am blessed because you brought me such great joy as a father. I'm blessed because you have a great talent in athletics and sports. I was blessed to sit in the stadium and watch you. Whatever those things are that emerge in your heart, put them on paper and sign it. I guess the reason I'm writing you today is because of you, son, I'm blessed.
We're going to show the story of you with your daughter. Which daughter? You have 7 children.
I do. This is my daughter, Rebecca Brooke.
Your daughter, Rebecca Brooke.
She's the one I wrote the Kodak story to.
And this is the story of you, and you're actually in a boat on the water, and she's telling the story of the letter that you gave her. And where in the timetable of all of this does it unfold? Is this prior to your creation of letters from Dad? When does Rebecca get this from you?
The very first semester. The very first time that those 12 men met is when this letter came. So it was very fresh. I had no idea what was about to happen with Letters from Dad.
Okay, here's the beautiful story of Rebecca Brooke.
For my 22nd birthday, I received a package in the mail from my dad. And I was a little shocked at this because I usually don't receive packages from him. And I knew it was from him because of his handwriting, and it's usually my mom or my stepmom's. And inside was a beautiful frame with a letter inside it entitled, "I am blessed because," and he had listed 20 reasons why he was blessed to have me as a daughter. This was special to me for many reasons. One was just the fact that he took time to make a special present for me. That usually doesn't happen. It's usually a check or something generic, but this year it was something unique to me that he had spent time doing. And another reason it was special is because he had listed 20 things about me personally that I will always have and can look at every day and know why I'm special to him and why he loves me.
It's a beautiful story.
I tell you, it brings tears to me to see that. She's a young lady now and living away from the home, but the story, I just got refreshed on it. Her love language is time. You know, some of it's touch, but hers is time. When you spend time with me, I feel loved. That's her love language. And usually I have to confess, I miss her birthday. You know, thank goodness my wonderful wife, Carolyn, is on the numbers, but this particular time I went, I know when her birthday is, and it was the day before. And I was sitting at my computer, and that was the very first I am blessed because letter. And I just, on this birthday, I'm blessed because, and I just got in a rhythm. And I looked at it, I said, that's really wonderful. I'm going to frame it. I'm going to put it in a beautiful font. I'll even tell you what kind of font it is. I tell the men, Edwardian IT, okay? You know, I'm going to tell you what font to use. And then it was so pretty, I ran down to Walmart and put it in a frame, and I FedExed it to her. And she just freaked out. And you know what she said to me? She said, Dad, my friends came over that night, and they saw the frame and the letter. Their response was, I'd give anything if my dad would do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, as I was telling you about my own experience, I would give anything to have the letter my father wrote me. I was too young at the time to appreciate it as anything other than a loving letter from my father, but it was a keepsake, to be sure.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. You bring up a subject. How do you write a 4-year-old a letter?
Well, how do you write a newborn a letter?
How do you write a newborn a letter? You write them just like they're 28 or 30 or 40. I tell you, it's the most fun thing in the world. I have these 80-year-old men in these legacy groups. And we have their sons that are about 55. And then we have the grandsons. And now you get them all together and they're writing and they're interacting with one another. So it's just this cross-generational mentoring.
There's a really powerful front page, I think it's front page article in the Los Angeles Times that I received through your office of 3 or 4 men weeping as they're writing these letters. It's really the story of how, I guess, an appreciation of our children and what this can mean to them. It's the gift. Isn't it about a gift?
It is a gift. It's the ultimate gift. It's the ultimate love letter. And it's so funny you mention that because, you know, in our legacy years, we don't sit around and cry and get mushy. You know, we talk all kinds of stuff. But there is something that happens when you peel off the football and you peel off the hunting and you peel that off, and a man finally begins to put in paper how he feels in his heart.
Yeah.
The good news is, women, we really do feel it here and here.
Right. Just can't get it in the hand.
Get it out.
Yeah. I think those of us, I'm speaking of the men similar to myself, who are inclined to tell our kids how much we love them and how important they are to us and how proud we are of them. I know this was true of myself. When I first read your book, I had certainly given thoughts to writing letters beyond the grave, so to speak, to my kids, those letters that would be opened after I passed. Wow. And I always thought that that was just too melodramatic, just too over the top, so to speak. Your book has made me aware that it isn't.
It is not. I had a lady that spoke at a Letters from Dad barbecue, a launch. We launch these things with, we just say it's the one party you don't want to miss. I was up in Pennsylvania. They were expecting about 80 men. They had 250 men. It was a wild game night. Now, how manly is that? We ate goose and bear and every imaginable creature the Pennsylvania folk can put together, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, it can be.
And here are these manly guys with their hats, and what are they talking about? How much they love their kids, and how excited they were to go on this journey. And there's nothing unmanly about it. It's the most manly thing a man can do, is to communicate his love, and we have fun doing it. And it's not melodramatic. I had a lady that was 90 years old talk to the men at that barbecue about a letter that her great grandfather wrote to his lineage from the Civil War.
Wow.
He sent a blessing into the future. And what happened as a result of that letter? She told what she felt the powerful results were of that letter.
It's almost therapeutic for some people, I'm sure.
Oh,
Let's go back to the audience. Here's George Thomas. George?
Bill, we have Carm from Johnson City, New York, driving down to be with us. And your question?
Hi, Bill. Hi, Greg. In the few minutes I spent on the phone with Monty in Weeping, listening to the story about a week ago, haven't had a chance to look at the material much, but I'm from a church who, within the past year, just started a men's ministry. And one of our mission statements, part of our mission statements, we look to try to make men more transparent amongst ourselves. And my first reaction from Letters from Dad was, what a tool. And would you comment on that and how we could fit it into our ministry and how you think maybe we should go about it?
Love to. Letters from Dad has been compared to an icebreaker. Picture an Arctic icebreaker. The one, the channel is frozen. Letters from Dad kind of comes in and crunches that ice so that the other things can come behind it. But what we're finding is when you kind of follow the formula using the media clips like you're seeing today, and you really promote it as the one party you don't want to miss. And you use it to go outside your church to bring just fathers in, soccer dads and everybody else in. It has an amazing thing. Usually between 2 and 3 times more men that have ever come to your church will come to your church because they're attracted to the message. And they go on this journey, and I think you'll find it a wonderful connect. And the way you get started is just sign up and get the materials, and we work with you. We train you all day, and then you can launch it in your community.
Okay, thank you.
You bet, George. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, indeed. We have somebody on our community website who want to ask you this question. Have you heard of anyone introducing your book to their own parent? Obviously somebody wishes their father, or perhaps their mother, was watching tonight and was getting this message about how much they need to hear these words. Can some young person hand the book to their parents and say, please learn this and write me a letter?
I cannot tell you how many times it's happened. Let me give you an example. The audience is laughing here. Let me give you an example of that. My wife's father is very unemotional, very detached, not close to his daughter whatsoever. And that makes me sad as her husband. And I determined that I was going to send the first copy to him. I had no faith whatsoever, no belief that anything would happen. But I remember taking my book and I opened it. I said, this is copy number 1. Okay, I don't want to really do this, but
you signed it for
I
him?
signed it and I wrote in it and I mailed it. And I said, Mother's Day is coming. And I know that there's nothing in the world she would rather have than a letter from you. I didn't expect it. And I was speaking to a very large church, about 4,000 people. And the day before I spoke, I got the letter. And I presented it to her at the service.
This is a letter for your wife from her father.
Father, he sent it to me.
Why did he send it to you?
Because I asked him to, if he would. I said, if you would, send it to me, because I want to read it to him, to her.
Or to her.
To her. And so, yes, the answer to that is yes. Just the other day, I had a man tell me that he wrote his father a blessing letter, a thank you letter. Dad, thank you. And I got these concepts from this wonderful book. I hope it's meaningful to you. That's all. He got back. Not just a letter. He got back a 12-page letter where he rehearsed his life from the time he was born all the way to his present. And he heard these words that he'd never heard in his life. Son, I love you. Yeah, it happens.
Mm. You hopped on an airplane earlier today and flew across our country to be here in northeastern Pennsylvania, only to be on this program
That's right.
tonight. That's remarkable that you would do that.
It's my honor to do it. My privilege. To sit here and visit with you and to hear how Letters from Dad has touched your life and how you've always wanted to do it and really haven't, and you bought the memory boxes, and your intent is to write your children. Here's the concept. The concept is get a box, deliver your first letter, and as life takes place, drop them a letter. Does it have to be a long letter? No. Drop them a note. Drop them a letter. When they're married, write them a letter. When they're walking down the aisle, write them a letter. And the concept is fill up the box so that long after you're gone.
So they don't see the letters until after you're gone.
Oh, no.
Which is it here?
Oh, no. They see all the letters you write. I write
As
them
you write
as
them?
you write them. Yes. Give them the box and give them the first letter and write them throughout their life. But there is that special letter that's withheld. That final letter is withheld. But oh yes, fill the box up with throughout life with letters.
So they keep the box.
Yeah, that's their box.
Nice.
Dad gave me this treasure box. He told me not to junk it up, just put the written treasures of life in it. He told me that one day I'm going to be a dad, and my kids will probably give me cards, and this is where I'm to store it.
So in many ways, your idea is perhaps reversing behaviors that might have been almost emotionally hereditary, generation to generation. Talking about men who had fathers who were unable to express, might themselves become men unable to express to their kids. Is that really what's at the heart of
That is what's
this?
being broken.
You're trying to break that.
It's almost a generational curse. Call it what it is. It's a generational curse. We didn't see it. We didn't get it. But you know the wonderful thing? I never expected this. The strangest thing happens when your children see how important this is to you, and they get the box, and they see your letter, and from time to time they write you write them. A weird thing happens. They begin to write you back. So many men have called me and says, I want you to read this letter. They'll show me the letter. And it starts exactly like Letters from Dad. It says, letters from your children, or letters from Karen. It's not letters from Dad. It's letters from Karen, letters from Bob. And they'll mimic it. They'll mimic the style even, all the way down to this important part. By the way, let me give you one little caveat. Very important. When you write your children, at the bottom of your letter, always write, Dad, 55, Trevor, 20, written at the why you wrote them, and make sure you do that, because that puts that letter in context, in the year, the date,
Indeed,
and why.
In effect, right.
That makes sense.
I noticed throughout your book, and I'm looking at it right now, there are photographs of people that presumably these photographs look like 1940s, 1950s, and they cover letters that were written, I think in most cases, let's see, here's 1960 something or other. But what do these letters that are spread throughout your book represent?
Oh my, that's a loaded question.
That's
Letters from Dad started because I didn't have my dad's letter, and my mother, when she was ill, she was about to die, she'd come out, I want you to come see me. I went out to Lubbock, Texas to see my mom. I'll never forget it. The sun was coming through her room, oxygen everywhere, and she says, you're not telling the truth to these men. I said, Mom, I don't have a letter from Dad. He says, no, but you have letters. she says, open that chest. So I opened the chest, and the smell of cedar filled the room. It was like a movie. And she says, in the corner, pull it out. And I reached down, and I pulled out a stack of letters with an old satin ribbon. She says, I want you to have these. These are the letters your father wrote to me during the war. Mm-hmm. I've gotten to know my father's heart through his letters. Those are the scanned letters back behind each of the photos.
You know, you want to read these letters, but you've got them covered by photographs.
Yeah. You're the first person that's ever asked me that question.
Is that right?
Yep. You are. Indeed.
I'll let everybody else who's going to interview you know they should ask you that question. Where do you go from here?
Where do I go from here in Letters from Dad? Letters from Dad is continuing to explode. Yes, we did start in the churches, and I see it. We just had one of the most successful things ever done in the Rotary Club. I went to speak at a Rotary Club. The men went crazy. They went, why didn't you come here first?
What Rotary Club? Where?
It's in Dallas.
In Dallas, Texas.
And then I'm speaking at 6 Rotary Clubs this month. So, I see it moving into everywhere. I see blessings from the heart. I think we better hang on. If we had, 810 organizations in 36 months, I bet we'll have 3,000 in 36 months with that.
When will you be fulfilled and satisfied in this mission of yours?
One more leg. There's one more leg. I want to teach these principles to our children. I have the third element will be called the Bless Fest, where I will teach youth to bless their world. Because if we can teach the youth to bless and not curse, to speak life and not cursing, to teach them the principles that maybe we didn't get at an early age, how much different can their life be?
Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful thought. I'm going to talk to you about gratitude in a moment, but let's give priority to our audience. Yes. Here's Kim in Hughesville. Kim, go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I have something I wanted to ask. My father is an only child, and he had 5 children. I'm one of 5, and I just turned 50. And I remember growing up, my father, told me that around age 5, his father just stopped communicating with him. He didn't talk to him. He never took him anywhere to like a baseball game or football game or anything. And I don't know if there was some kind of accident. My grandfather had a body shop or what. There was a fire or something, and I don't know. Someone got hurt. I don't know what happened, but or if he had like a nervous breakdown, but he just stopped communicating with my father. And growing up, I remember my father, telling me that. And one time he asked my grandfather, who communicated really well with me, and he seemed to communicate really well with women. He did have 4 sisters growing up as the only boy. Maybe that had something to do with it.
Kim,
but my poor dad, being an only child, he asked my grandfather one day what he was proud of him for, in his life. He had 5 children at that time and was married. And my grandfather said, well, if I think of something, I'll let you know. And that broke my heart. And I'm wondering what I can do as a daughter to help my father, or get my father in touch with men that can relate to him and he can relate to.
That's a great question, Kim. Thank you.
How old is your father, Kim?
My father just turned 73 on February 4th.
Okay.
He is diabetic. He's an only child. My mom died when she was 42. I was 14. He had kids that were 12, 13, 14, 17, 18 when she passed away.
Okay, what I would suggest, you got to start somewhere. And I don't hawk my book. I really don't. But get him something to motivate him. And I think if he would read the book, he would be motivated. And once he's motivated and his heart is touched, maybe it can unlock his heart. I think that's what I'm seeing with men. They're going, duh, I didn't know it was important. And then there's this wound that happens. And you referred to it there, Kim. Your father has a wound in his heart. And I call that the father wound, or it's been called the father wound. But perhaps maybe reading the book would help him, and who knows, just maybe you might get a letter. Yeah. I'm sorry, I can't go any further than that.
Okay, we have a minute left. Let me wrap this up. I have a 93-year-old mother, and she's healthy, and I'm grateful for her. I asked her not too long ago what her secret to the long life was, and I didn't mean it in a in a silly way. I mean, really, Mom, what's the secret? She said one word, gratitude. And then not a couple of months later, Oprah Winfrey gives the commencement address at Howard University and advises these thousands of students in front of her that the secret to a happy life will be if they can be grateful for something every day. That seemed very powerful to me. And it seems that you've suggested that in the next leg of Letters from Dad. Is there a connection there?
There is. There is exactly a connection. I would think it's when we begin to communicate with others how proud we are, how honored we are to know them, how blessed we are to have them in our life. You'll be amazed at all the confusion that leaves relationships, how marriages can be healed, how teens can communicate with your parents again, and go out and bless the world. Tell them you're thankful. Tell them you're grateful.
Let me shake your hand. The music is on. That means we're done. Greg Vaughn, thank you for a great interview.
It's an honor. Thank you.
We'll see you. And thank you for watching. Good night.